"Old man, you won't see a single cent of my money." Those were the words my own son used as he threw me onto the sidewalk, handing me only 2 bags of torn clothes and a box with old shoes that didn't even fit my feet anymore. Without looking back, he walked away. He had won the lottery just 2 days before, and consumed by the arrogance of sudden fortune, said he was now too rich to support dead weight like me. But what my son Roberto didn't know is that I, Eduardo Santos, had been keeping a secret for 22 years. A secret that was about to turn his life completely upside down. And now you're going to hear the most satisfying revenge story I've ever told. Hit that like button because this story needs to reach everyone, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. The abandonment. My name is Eduardo Santos. I'm 73 years old, and for 22 years of my life, every Tuesday and Friday, I did exactly the same thing. I took my hard-earned $12 from work and went to Manuel's lottery shop to bet on the same numbers: 0, 3, 0, 7, 15, 22, 35, 44. Do you want to know why those numbers? It was my son Roberto's birth date, 0307, the day his mother abandoned us, 1522, and my age when he was born, 35. The last number, 44, was how old I was when I swore that one day I would give him a better life. But let me tell the story from the beginning, because you need to understand how I got to this point. The story of a single father. When Roberto was only 7 years old, my wife Carmen simply disappeared. She left a note on the kitchen table saying she couldn't stand this life of poverty anymore and that she was going to find someone who could give her what she deserved. From that day on, it was just me and my boy against the world. I worked as a metal worker for 15 years, getting up at 4 in the morning to arrive at the factory by 6. After work, I did side jobs as a weekend painter. On holidays, I worked security at events. All of this to ensure Roberto never went without. Our little 3-room house in the East Zone was simple, but it was ours. I painted every wall myself, fixed every leaky faucet, changed every burned-out light bulb. Roberto studied at public school, but I always bought the best school supplies that money allowed. During adolescence, things started getting difficult. Roberto began to feel ashamed of our condition. I could see in his eyes that shame when school friends came over and saw our old sofa, our small television, our refrigerator that made noise. "Dad, why don't we have a car?" he would ask. "Dad, why is our house so small? Dad, why don't you get a better job?" Each question was like a stab to my heart, but I always answered with patience. "Son, one day our life will get better. You'll see." The 22-year dream, that's when I started playing the lottery. It wasn't out of addiction, it wasn't out of desperation, it was out of hope. It was because I needed to believe that one day I could give my son everything he deserved, all. The games were made in my name, with my social security number, with my signature. Manuel, the lottery shop owner, can confirm this to this day. For 22 years, twice a week, religiously. Roberto grew up, graduated in business administration, and got a job at a medium-sized company. Even so, he continued living with me. He said it was to help with the bills, but I knew he was saving money to leave home as soon as possible. At 35, he was still living with me. He already earned well, wore brand-name clothes, had the latest model cell phone, but continued, sharing with me that little house he hated so much. And me, I continued playing the lottery, always with the same hope. The night that changed everything, it was a Friday, September 15th. I remember it like it was yesterday. Roberto had come home in a bad mood, complaining about traffic, complaining about work, complaining about life. "Dad, what's that smell?" he asked with a disgusted face when he entered the kitchen. "It's beans with sausage, son. Your favorite dish." "Favorite dish when I was 10, Dad." Nowadays I have different tastes. I didn't respond. I just served the food and we sat down to eat in silence. That's when he saw my lottery ticket on the table. "Still playing this crap, Dad?" he said, picking up the ticket. 22 years playing and nothing so far. When are you going to understand that this is a waste of time? One day our luck will come, son. Our luck? He laughed with contempt. Dad, I'm 35 years old. I build my own luck with my own work. I don't wait for miracles to fall from the sky. I put the ticket in my pocket and didn't say anything else. Roberto finished eating, took the car he had bought the month before, and went out to meet friends. On Saturday morning, as I always did, I turned on the radio to hear the Mega Sena results. The numbers drawn were 03, 07, 15, 22, 35, 44. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. I took my ticket with trembling hands and checked number by number. 03, 07, 15, 22, 35, 44, all correct. I had won $8,700,000 in the lottery. The moment of truth, Roberto was still sleeping when I discovered I had won. I kept walking around the house like crazy, not knowing how to tell him. After 22 years, our life was finally going to change. When he woke up around noon, I was in the living room with the ticket in my hand and an expression he had never seen on my face. "Roberto, son, sit here. I need to tell you something." "What is it now, Dad?" he said, yawning and throwing himself on the sofa. "We won the lottery." "Very funny, Dad. How much did you win? $10? $8,700,000. His expression changed completely. He took the ticket from my hand and checked the numbers on his phone. His eyes kept getting bigger and bigger. "Dad, is this real?" "It's real, son. After 22 years, I finally made it. Now, you'll never have to be ashamed of me again. We can buy a big house, a nice car, travel the world." But his reaction wasn't what I expected. He got up from the sofa, started pacing back and forth, running his hand through his hair, and then he said something that chilled me. "Dad, you can't receive this money." "What do you mean, son? You're 73 years old. You don't know how to manage money. Everyone will take advantage of you. This money will be gone in 2 years. "Roberto, I worked my whole life. I know the value of money better than anyone. Dad, with all due respect, you've never had more than $1,000 in your account. How are you going to know what to do with almost $9 million? That's when he made the proposal that would change our relationship forever. "Let's do this. I'll go to the bank and handle all the paperwork. The money stays with me, and I'll give you a monthly allowance of $2,000. That way you don't have to worry about anything, and the money stays well managed." I was speechless. My own son was trying to take the prize I had won. "Son, but the ticket is in my name. I'm the one who played for 22 years. "Dad, legally, it might be in your name, but it was my money that funded these games in recent years. Besides, I'm the one who has the capacity to manage this amount." "Roberto, those $12 for the lottery always came from my money. You can ask Manuel." "Dad, stop being stubborn. You should be happy. $2,000 a month is more than your retirement. You'll live like a king." That night I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about what to do. On one hand, Roberto was my only son, and maybe he was right about me not knowing how to manage so much money. On the other hand, something inside me screamed that this wasn't right. The betrayal Monday morning, Roberto left early. He said he was going to handle some papers at the bank and would be back soon. He spent the whole day away. When he came back at night, he had a strange expression on his face. "Done, Dad. I solved everything." "What do you mean, son?" "I went to the bank, presented the ticket, and the money is already being transferred to my account. It's $7,800,000 net after taxes." I felt the world spinning around me. "Roberto, how did you manage to do this? The ticket was in my name." "Dad, I said you have senility problems and gave me power of attorney to handle this. Don't worry, it was all legal. But I never signed any power of attorney. Dad, you did sign it. Remember last week I asked you to sign some papers from my work? It was the power of attorney. At that moment, I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My own son had deceived me. He had forged documents to steal my prize. Roberto, this is a crime. You forged my signature. Dad, calm down. It wasn't forgery. You really signed it. You just didn't read properly what you were signing. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie, but I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. Well, now that the money's with me, we need to talk about some changes. What changes? Dad, I'm going to buy a new apartment. A beautiful modern place compatible with my new financial situation. And me? You stay here in the house. Actually, about that, I thought a lot, and I think it would be better if you looked for a smaller place. This house is too big for one person. Roberto, this is my house. I paid every installment of it. Dad, technically the house is in my name too. And now that I have the means, I want to sell it and invest the money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. In 48 hours, my son had stolen my lottery prize and now wanted to kick me out of my house. Son, for God's sake, what's happening? To you? What's happening is that I finally have the means to live the life I always wanted. And sorry, Dad, but in this new life there's no room for certain things from the past. The expulsion. Tuesday, Roberto came home with 2 big men. Dad, these are the guys who are going to help you move. What move? I talked to Rosa, the neighbor. At the end of the street. She has a small room in the back of her house that she rents for $400. I already paid the first 6 months. Roberto, you can't do this to me. Dad, I'm being generous. Besides paying the rent, I'll give you $1,200 a month for your expenses. It's more than you make from retirement. But son, why are you doing this? I raised you alone. I worked like hell to give you everything. That's when he said the words that marked me forever. Dad, I'm going to be honest with you. My whole life I was ashamed of being your son, ashamed of our poverty, ashamed of our house, ashamed of you. Now that I finally have money, I won't let the past pull me down again. Roberto, old man, you won't see a single cent of my money. And he handed me 2 torn plastic bags with some old clothes and a box with shoes that didn't even fit my feet anymore. The guys will take you to Rosa's house. Don't make a scene. I left that house carrying 2 bags, not understanding how I had reached that point. The son I raised, whom I loved, whom I protected my entire life, was throwing me out on the street like I was an old dog. Rosa received me with pity in her eyes. The little room in the back was humid, small, with a musty smell, but it was what I had now. That first night, lying on a borrowed bed, looking at the cracked ceiling, I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. It wasn't just the pain of betrayal. It was the pain of discovering that the son for whom I had sacrificed everything saw me as a burden. But remember, I said at the beginning that I had been keeping a secret for 22 years. The secret that would change everything well then. In the middle of those 2 bags of old clothes that Roberto gave me, there was a small red agenda that I had carried in my pocket for more than 2 decades. In this agenda, I religiously kept all the receipts from my lottery games. All of them. Since the first game I made on March 15th, 2001, hundreds of receipts, all in my name, all with my signature, all with my social security number. The definitive proof that for 22 years I had played the lottery with my own money, in my own name. Roberto had made a fatal mistake. He didn't know about the existence of this agenda. The next morning, still shaken by the situation, I decided to talk to my neighbor Joaquim, a 68-year-old man who had always been my friend. I told him everything that had happened. Eduardo, what your son did is a crime. It's embezzlement, document forgery. You need to sue him. Joaquim, he's my son. How am I going to sue my own son? Eduardo, he didn't treat you like a father. He treated you like garbage. You have rights, man. Joaquim convinced me to look for a lawyer. He knew Dr. Henrique Almeida, a lawyer who handled labor cases in the region. In Dr. Henrique's office, I showed all the lottery receipts. Mr. Eduardo, this here is pure gold in terms of evidence. 22 years of receipts in your name. There's no discussion. The prize is legally yours. But doctor, my son said I signed a power of attorney. If you don't remember signing a specific power of attorney for the lottery, then it was forgery. And even if you signed thinking it was something else, that would be moral coercion. Do you think I have a chance of winning? Mr. Eduardo, it's not a matter of having chances. It's a matter of justice. The prize is yours by right. The legal wardo. Henrique filed an action for nullity of the power of attorney and restitution of the prize. In addition, he requested moral damages for the humiliation I suffered. When Roberto received the court summons, he was furious. He called me screaming, "Dad, what is this nonsense? Are you suing me?" "Roberto, you stole my money and threw me out on the street. What did you expect? Stole. I'm taking care of our money. Our money. You yourself said I wouldn't see a single cent of your money. Dad, you're making a mistake. I have the best lawyer in São Paulo. You're going to lose and still owe court. Costs." Roberto hired Dr. Antonio Pereira, a famous criminal lawyer who charged $50,000 just in initial fees. The defense strategy was simple. Try to prove that I didn't have the mental capacity to manage the prize, and that Roberto had acted in good faith. During the testimonies, Roberto lied shamelessly. "Your Honor, my father has always had memory problems. He himself asked me to take care of the money because he was afraid of being robbed. And about the lottery games, Dr. Roberto. They were family games, Your Honor. I was the one who gave him money to go to the lottery shop. It was a way for him to feel useful." Each lie was like a stab to my heart. But then it was my turn to speak. "Your Honor, I'm 73 years old, but I have full mental capacity. For 22 years, I played the lottery with my own money, from my retirement, and the side jobs I did. Here are all the receipts." I showed the judge the red agenda with hundreds of receipts. "I worked my whole life as a metal worker, painter, and security guard to raise my son alone. I always dreamed that one day I would be able to give him a better life. When I finally won the lottery, instead of being happy, he stole my prize and threw me out on the street." The judge, Dr. Mariana Castro, analyzed all the documents carefully. "Dr. Roberto, do you have any proof that you gave money to your father for the lottery games?" "I don't have physical proof, Your Honor, but..." "And about the power of attorney, can you explain better how it was obtained?" Roberto started to stutter. It was clear that he had lied. The witnesses, Doctor. Enrique called 3 fundamental witnesses. Manuel, lottery shop owner. "Doctor, I've known Mr. Eduardo for more than 20 years. He always played alone, always paid with his own money. I never saw his son at the lottery shop, nor did I ever hear Eduardo say it was his son's money." Joaquim, neighbor. "Eduardo has been my neighbor for 15 years. I always saw him leave the house twice a week to play the lottery. He always commented to me about the numbers he played. It was the dream of his life." Conceição, former neighbor. "Eduardo raised that boy alone after his wife abandoned them both. He worked like hell. I never saw a father sacrifice so much for a son. And now the boy does this to him. It's a shame." The witnesses were fundamental. Roberto couldn't present any evidence that he had funded the lottery games. The Medical Examination At the request of Roberto's defense, I underwent a medical examination to assess my mental capacity. Dr. Paulo Mendes, a geriatrician specializing in legal cases, examined me for 2 hours. Mr. Eduardo presents full cognitive capacity for his age. Excellent memory, preserved logical reasoning, normal judgment capacity. There is no indication of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other mental impairment. The medical report completely destroyed the defense's thesis, the discovery of the scam during the process instruction. Dr. Henrique discovered something that changed everything. Analyzing the documents from the Federal Savings Bank, it was proven that Roberto had presented a false power of attorney. The signature on the power of attorney didn't match my signature on other documents. Furthermore, the bank confirmed that I had never been personally at the branch to sign any power of attorney. Roberto had committed ideological falsification, use of false documents and embezzlement. Your Honor, said Dr. Henrique, we are facing a clear case of crime. Against the elderly, provided for in the elderly statute, with aggravation for being practiced by a descendant. The final judgment. The trial was scheduled for a Thursday, March 22nd. So many people came that they couldn't all fit in the courtroom. The story had leaked to the local press. Son steals lottery prize from elderly father and kicks him out of house. Roberto arrived in an expensive suit, accompanied by his lawyer. I arrived in my simple clothes, accompanied by Dr. Henrique. Judge Dr. Mariana Castro began by reading the case summary. This is an action for nullity of power of attorney and restitution of values, where the plaintiff, Eduardo Santos, requests the return of a lottery prize improperly appropriated by the defendant, Roberto Santos, his son. It was 4 hours of trial. Roberto continued insisting on his lies, but the evidence was overwhelming against him. At the time of sentencing, the room fell completely silent. Based on the evidence presented, said the judge, it was proven that the lottery prize legitimately belongs to the plaintiff, Eduardo Santos, who played for 22 years with his own resources, always in his name. The power of attorney presented by the defendant is manifestly false, constituting the crime of document forgery. Furthermore, the defendant's conduct is morally reprehensible to the extreme, improperly appropriating his own father's lottery prize and then kicking him out of house demonstrates a coldness and cruelty that this court cannot tolerate. For these reasons, I rule the plaintiff's request granted, determining that the defendant restore the full amount of the prize, corrected and with interest, within 30 days, under penalty of asset seizure. I also condemn the defendant to pay $100,000 as moral damages and court costs. Finally, I determine that a copy of the records be sent to the public ministry to investigate the crime of document forgery and mistreatment of the elderly. The audience exploded in applause. I cried. For the first time in months, I cried with joy. The collection, Roberto tried to appeal, but Dr. Henrique had built a perfect case. The Court of Justice maintained the sentence unanimously. Since Roberto didn't pay voluntarily, Dr. Henrique seized the new apartment he had bought with my money. In the end, I received $6,400,000. The rest had been spent by Roberto in 8 months on luxury cars, trips, and failed businesses. But the most important thing wasn't the money. It was having recovered my dignity. The new life with my money back. The first thing I did was buy my house back. Roberto had sold it to a young couple, but they agreed to sell it back for a fair price. I renovated the entire house. I put in new flooring, painted the walls, changed all the furniture. The little 3-room house was beautiful, just as I had always dreamed it would be. I bought a small car, a red Onyx, and learned to drive at 74. After all, it's never too late to fulfill dreams. But the biggest change wasn't material. It was emotional. For the first time in my life, I felt valued. I started attending the neighborhood community center, where I participated in a seniors group. I met other people my age, made new friends, even started dating Alice, a 68-year-old widow who also attended the group. I discovered that I had value, that I deserved respect, that I didn't need to accept crumbs from anyone, not even my own son. The prodigal son. 3 years passed. Roberto lost everything. Without money, without apartment, without luxury car, he had to make do as an app driver, earning about $2,800 a month. One Sunday morning, he appeared at my door. He was thin, with simple clothes, disheveled hair. He was no longer the arrogant man who had kicked me out of the house. "Dad, can I talk to you?" "You can come in." He looked around the house, seeing how beautiful it had become after the renovation. "Dad, I came to ask for forgiveness." "Sit down, Roberto. Dad, I know I was wrong, very wrong. I was greedy, I was cruel to you. There's no excuse for what I did." "And why are you here now, son?" "Because in these 3 years, I learned the value of honest work. I learned what it's like to face difficulties. And I learned the value of having a father. Roberto, you hurt me a lot. It wasn't just the money. It was the coldness. It was the cruelty. It was the lack of respect." "I know, Dad. And I'm not here asking for money or asking to come back to live with you. I'm here asking for just one thing, a chance to regain your respect." I looked into my son's eyes and saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Sincerity. "Roberto, I forgive you. You are my son and always will be. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to how it was before." "I understand, Dad. If you really changed, you'll have to prove it, with actions, not words." "How?" "Come visit me once a week, without rushing, without interest. Just to talk, have coffee, catch up." "Okay, Dad. And if I ever need help, I want to know I can count on you. You can count on me, Dad. You can always count on me." 3 years later, today, Roberto really has changed. He works as an app driver during the week and as a mechanic on weekends. He married a simple girl, Carla, and they had a daughter, Eduarda, who carries my name. Every Sunday he comes to have lunch with me. We bring our granddaughter to play in the yard I renovated especially for her. Our relationship never went back to how it was before, but there's mutual respect now. He learned the value of honest work, and I learned it's never too late to stand up for yourself and demand dignity. With my money, besides taking care of myself, I help other people. I finance a social project at the community center that offers professional courses for needy young people. I also help other elderly people who go through situations similar to mine. I've already financed 3 lawsuits for people who were robbed by their own children. The lesson. Do you want to know what the biggest lesson of this story was? It's not about money. It's not about lottery. It's about dignity. For 73 years of my life, I always put myself second. First came my wife, then came my son. I was always the last priority in my own life. When Roberto kicked me out of the house, as painful as it was at that moment that I discovered something. I matter. 2, it's not selfish to value yourself. It's not selfish to demand respect. It's not selfish to fight for your rights, even if it's against the person you love most. There's a difference between being humble and being a doormat. There's a difference between being generous and being a fool. There's a difference between forgiving and being weak. Today, at 76, I'm a fulfilled man. Not because I have money in the bank, but because I have something much more valuable, self-esteem. I wake up every day knowing I deserve respect, that I worked my whole life and have the right to live with dignity, that I don't need to accept crumbs from anyone. And do you know what's most interesting? After I learned to value myself, the people around me also started to value me more. Alice treats me like a king. My grandchildren admire me. Even Roberto respects me now. The message for ungrateful children. If there's any child watching this video who treats their parents badly, who is ashamed of their parents, who thinks their parents are a burden in life, let me give you a message. Your parents gave up their dreams to fulfill your dreams. They worked when they were tired, smiled when they were sad, gave you the best even when they had nothing to give. This annoying old person you despise was once young. They had dreams. They wanted to travel the world, buy beautiful things, live adventures. But they gave up all of this to take care of you, and now, in old age, when they need affection, attention, respect, you think they're a burden? Remember one thing. you will also grow old. And your children are watching how you treat their grandparents. They're learning that when a person gets old, they become trash. Don't complain later when it's your turn. It's your turn. The message for parents and for parents who are watching and going through similar situations, let me give you a message too. Stop accepting disrespect from children in the name of love. True love includes respect. If your children don't respect you, it's not love they feel. It's convenience. You raised these children. You gave everything of yourself. You have the right to live with dignity in old age. Don't accept being treated as a burden, as a nuisance, as a favor. If necessary, fight for your rights. Sue them. Stand up for yourselves. Demand respect. And one very important thing, don't be afraid to be alone. It's better to be alone with dignity than accompanied while being humiliated. When you learn to value yourselves, people around you will also start to value you. The message for everyone. In the end, this story isn't just about an old man and his ungrateful son. It's about justice. It's about dignity. It's about never giving up fighting for what's right. How many people do you know who are stepped on by their own family? How many fathers and mothers spend their last years being humiliated by the children they raised? How many people accept crumbs because they're afraid of being alone? How many people bow their heads to family in the name of peace? My story proves it's never too late to change this situation. It's never too late to recover dignity. It's never too late to demand respect. I was 73 when I decided I wouldn't accept disrespect anymore. And it was the best decision I made in my life. The final plot twist, and do you think the story ended there? There's still one more twist that will leave you speechless. Last week, Roberto came to visit me as he does every Sunday, but this time, he had a strange expression on his face. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Tell me, son. Do you remember Mom?" "I remember." "Why?" "She contacted me." I felt a chill in my stomach. Carmen, my ex-wife who had abandoned us 40 years ago, had contacted Roberto. What did she want? She found out about the lottery story. She read it on the internet. And now she wants part of the money. What do you mean? She hired a lawyer and is saying she has a right to half, since you two never officially divorced. And does she? Dad, technically she might be right. You married under partial community of property. If she proves the money was won during the marriage, she might be entitled to half. After 40 years? After abandoning the family? Dad, law, it doesn't matter. If the marriage wasn't dissolved, she continues to be your legal wife. Another legal battle ahead, this time against the woman who abandoned me when I needed her most. But you know what? I'm not worried. At 76, I've learned that life is a constant struggle, and that whoever has a clear conscience and truth on their side always comes out victorious. If Carmen wants to fight, let her come. I have the best lawyer. I have proof of abandonment of home. I have witnesses that she never contributed anything, and, above all, I have something she'll never have, the dignity of someone who always did the right thing. The final message. This story isn't over yet, and I promise I'll continue telling each chapter of this saga here on the channel. But if you stayed until here, it's because you understood the true message. It's never too late to recover your dignity. It's never too late to fight for your rights. It's never too late to demand respect. It doesn't matter if you're 30, 50, 70, or 90 years old. It doesn't matter if it's a child, wife, husband, relative, or friend who is stepping on you. Lift your head. Value yourselves. Fight for your rights. Because at the end of life, what matters isn't how much money you had in the bank. It's whether you managed to live with dignity, and dignity, my friends, is priceless. Epilogue. 6 months later, Carmen lost the case. The judge considered that abandoning home for 40 years constituted tacit renunciation of marital property. Furthermore, since the lottery prize was the result of my individual work during all these years, It didn't enter the division of assets. She still tried to appeal, but gave up when she discovered she would have to pay court costs. Roberto stood by my side during this whole fight. It was the first time in decades that I felt I really had a son by my side. "Dad," he told me on the day of the sentence, "thank you for teaching me the difference between right and wrong. It took me 40 years to learn, but I learned. Today, my life is at peace. I have my house, I have my money, I have my dignity, I have a family that respects me. But most important of all, I have the clear conscience of someone who always fought for what's right. And you, will you fight for your dignity too? Leave your stories in the comments. How many of you have been through similar situations? How many managed to turn things around? Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and follow the next stories. Because as long as injustice exists in the world, I'll be here telling stories of people who had the courage to fight for what's right. Until next time, and remember, you deserve respect. Additional chapters for extended content. Chapter 7, The Community Impact. After my victory became public knowledge throughout the neighborhood, something incredible started happening. Other elderly people began approaching me, sharing their own stories of family abuse and financial exploitation. There was 78-year-old Maria, whose daughter had taken control of her pension and was giving her only scraps to live on. There was 81-year-old Jose, whose son had sold his house without permission and put him in a terrible nursing home. I realized my case wasn't isolated. It was part of a much larger problem affecting thousands of elderly people across the country. That's when I decided to do something about it. With part of my lottery money, I created the Silver Dignity Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping elderly people who are victims of abuse by their own families. We offer free legal advice, psychological support, and when necessary, financial help to cover lawyer costs for those who can't afford them. In the first year alone, we helped 43 elderly people recover control of their finances and dignity. Each victory was like reliving my own triumph. One case that particularly touched me was that of 75-year-old Anna. Her 3 children had conspired together to have her declared mentally incompetent so they could take control of her substantial savings from 30 years of working as a seamstress. Anna had been forced to live in a tiny, cold room while her children sold her house and spent her money on luxury items. When she came to our foundation, she was broken, convinced that she really was crazy, as her children claimed. But Anna was sharp as a tack. She remembered every detail of her financial transactions, every date, every amount. Her children had simply taken advantage of her trust and kindness. We fought for 8 months in court. The children hired expensive lawyers and tried every dirty trick in the book. They claimed Anna was delusional, that she was making up stories, that she was too old to manage her affairs. But we had documentation, we had witnesses. Most importantly, we had the truth. When the judge ruled in Anna's favor, ordering her children to return every penny they had stolen, she broke down crying in the courtroom. "Mr. Eduardo," she told me afterwards, "you gave me back more than my money. You gave me back my life." Stories like Anna's reinforced my belief that what I went through with Roberto wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was part of a systemic problem that needed addressing. Chapter 8. The media attention as news. Of my foundation's spread, media outlets began reaching out for interviews. At first, I was hesitant. I'm a simple man who never sought the spotlight, but I realized that speaking publicly about elder abuse could help prevent other families from going through what Roberto and I experienced. My first television interview was terrifying. Sitting across from a polished news anchor, I felt completely out of my element. But when she asked me to tell my story, something clicked. I spoke from the heart about the pain of being betrayed by the person you love most, about the humiliation of being thrown out of your own home, about the long road to recovery and redemption. The interview went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed over 2 million times across various platforms. But more importantly, it opened floodgates. Hundreds of elderly people from across the country contacted our foundation, sharing their own stories of abuse and asking for help. There was the retired teacher whose grandson had stolen her identity and taken out credit cards in her name. There was the former construction worker whose daughter had forged his signature to take out a mortgage on his paid-off house. Each story broke my heart, but also strengthened my resolve to keep fighting. The media attention also brought something unexpected: reconciliation opportunities. Several adult children who had been estranged from their elderly parents reached out after seeing the interviews, wanting to make amends before it was too late. One particularly moving message came from a woman named Patricia. "Mr. Eduardo, I saw your interview and realized I've been treating my 70-year-old mother the same way your son treated you. I've been dismissive, impatient, and frankly ashamed of her simple ways. Your story opened my eyes. I called my mother today and apologized. We're having lunch tomorrow for the first time in 2 years. Thank you for showing me what I was becoming." Messages like Patricia's reminded me that not all stories have to end in court battles. Sometimes, awareness and education can prevent the damage from happening in the first place. Chapter 9. The Political Awakening. The more I learned about elder abuse through my foundation work, the more I realized that individual legal battles weren't enough. The system itself needed to change. I began researching laws and policies related to elder protection. What I found was shocking. Despite having an elder statute on paper, enforcement was weak and penalties were often minimal. Children who financially exploited their elderly parents might face a small fine at most. There were virtually no consequences for emotional abuse, and the bureaucracy around reporting and investigating elder abuse was so complex that most cases never even made it to court. I decided to do something I never thought I'd do in my 70s. I became politically active. I started attending city council meetings, speaking during public comment periods about the need for stronger elder protection laws. I organized other seniors to advocate for better enforcement of existing statutes. My foundation began lobbying for specific policy changes, mandatory reporting requirements for banks when they suspect elder financial abuse, stronger penalties for family members who exploit elderly relatives, simplified legal procedures for seniors seeking to recover stolen assets, better funding for adult protective services, public awareness campaigns about elder abuse. The political establishment initially didn't take me seriously. Here was this elderly man with a simple background trying to influence policy. But persistence pays off. After a year of consistent advocacy, we managed to get 3 important pieces of legislation passed at the municipal level. First, banks were now required to report suspicious transactions involving elderly customers to adult protective services within 24 hours. Second, the penalty for financial exploitation of persons over 65 was increased from a misdemeanor to a felony, with mandatory minimum sentences. Third, the city allocated funding for a specialized elder abuse court with judges trained specifically. In these types of cases, these weren't massive changes, but they were a start. And most importantly, they sent a message that our community wouldn't tolerate the abuse of its senior citizens. Chapter 10. The unexpected friendship. One of the most surprising developments in my post-lottery life was the friendship I developed with Dr. Henrique, my lawyer. Initially, our relationship was strictly professional. He was the sharp legal mind who helped me recover my dignity and my money. I was grateful, but I didn't expect anything beyond the attorney-client relationship. But as we worked together on foundation cases, I discovered that Henrique was more than just a skilled lawyer. He was a man driven by a genuine sense of justice, particularly when it came to protecting vulnerable people. Henrique was in his early 50s, divorced, with 2 teenage children he saw on weekends. Despite his successful practice, he often took elder abuse cases pro bono through my foundation. "Eduardo," he told me one day over coffee, "working on your case changed something in me. I realized that all the corporate law in the world doesn't matter if we're not protecting the people who built our society." Our friendship deepened when I learned about his own family history. His grandfather had been cheated out of his farm by his own brother in the 1970s. The family never recovered financially, and the betrayal had haunted Henrique's father his entire life. "That's why these cases matter so much to me," Henrique explained. "I see my grandfather in every elderly client who walks through our door." We began having regular dinners together, sometimes joined by Alice and occasionally by Roberto and his family. What started as a professional relationship had become one of the most meaningful friendships of my later life. Henrique also became instrumental in helping me navigate the more complex legal and political aspects of running the foundation. His expertise complemented my passion and lived experience. "You know what I admire most about you, Eduardo?" he said during one of our dinners. "You could have just taken your money, bought a nice house, and lived quietly. Instead, you chose to fight for others who can't fight for themselves." "I learned something important during my battle with Roberto," I replied. "Individual dignity matters, but collective action creates lasting change." Chapter 11. The health scare. At 77, I thought I had overcome life's major challenges. I had my money, my dignity, my purpose through the foundation, and slowly rebuilding relationships with family. Then came the diagnosis that shook everything. During a routine checkup, Dr. Silva found irregularities in my blood work that led to further testing. After a week of anxious waiting, the results came back. I had early-stage prostate cancer. "The good news," Dr. Silva explained, "is that we caught it early. With proper treatment, your prognosis is very good, but we need to act quickly." The irony wasn't lost on me. Just when I had finally learned to live fully, my mortality came knocking at the door. The news affected everyone differently. Alice was scared but supportive, immediately researching treatment options and accompanying me to every appointment. Henrique offered to help coordinate my care and ensure I had access to the best specialists. But the most surprising reaction came from Roberto. When I called to tell him about the diagnosis, there was a long silence on the phone. "Dad, I'm coming over right now." "Son, you don't need to." "Yes, I do need to. We'll face this together." For the next 6 months, as I underwent treatment, Roberto showed up in ways I hadn't seen since he was a child. He drove me to chemotherapy sessions, sat with me during the long hours of treatment, and handled foundation business when I was too weak to work. One particularly difficult day, after a treatment that left me nauseated and exhausted, Roberto sat by my hospital bed and took my hand. "Dad, I need to tell you something. These past few years, I thought I was making amends for what I did, but I realize now that I was still thinking about it wrong." "What do you mean?" "I was treating our rebuilt relationship like some kind of debt I owed you. Like if I visited regularly and was respectful, eventually the account would be balanced. And now I understand that it was never about balancing accounts. You're my father, period. Not because of what you did for me or what I owe you, but because that's who you are. And I love you not because I should, but because you're worth loving." Tears ran down both our faces as he spoke those words. The cancer treatment was successful. 6 months later, I was declared cancer-free, but more than my physical health had been restored. My relationship with Roberto had been healed in ways I never thought possible. Chapter 12. The Legacy Plan Facing Cancer. Even successfully forces you to think about legacy and mortality in ways you never have before. As I recovered from treatment, I began seriously considering what would happen to the foundation and my remaining lottery money when I was gone. I had about $5 million left after legal fees, house renovations, foundation startup costs, and medical expenses. While substantial, I knew it needed to be managed carefully to ensure maximum impact. I worked with Henrique to establish a formal trust structure for the foundation, ensuring it could continue operating long after I was gone. We created a board of directors that included Alice, Roberto, Dr. Silva, and 3 community leaders who had been involved with our elder advocacy work. But the real challenge was succession planning. Who would lead the foundation when I could no longer do so? Initially, I considered asking Henrique to take over. He had the legal expertise and shared my passion for elder rights. But he was already juggling a busy law practice and his own family responsibilities. The answer came from an unexpected source. Anna, the seamstress whose children had tried to have her declared incompetent. After we helped her win her case, Anna had become one of our most dedicated volunteers. Despite being 75, she had energy and organizational skills that amazed everyone. She had also developed a keen understanding of elder abuse issues through her own experience. "Eduardo," she said during one of our board meetings, "I want to formally apply to become your successor as executive director of the foundation." I was surprised but intrigued. "Anna, that's a huge responsibility." You sure you want to take this on? Let me tell you something," she replied with the fierce determination I remembered from her court case. "For 70 years, I let other people make decisions for me. First my parents, then my husband, finally my children. This foundation taught me that I have value and capability that I never fully used. But the workload, the stress. Eduardo, you started this foundation at 74, after going through your own traumatic experience. I'm 75, and I've already proven I can fight when it matters. Plus, I have something you didn't have when you started, your experience and support system to learn from." Her logic was compelling. Over the following months, I began gradually transitioning responsibilities to Anna, with Henrique providing legal oversight and Roberto handling financial management. Anna brought her own perspectives and innovations to the foundation. Having been a victim herself, she understood the emotional and psychological aspects of elder abuse in ways that even I, despite my experience, hadn't fully grasped. She established support groups for elder abuse survivors, created educational workshops for adult children on healthy family financial relationships, and developed partnerships with social workers and geriatricians to identify at-risk seniors. Under Anna's leadership, the foundation helped over 100 elderly people in its second year, more than double our first-year numbers. Chapter 13. The Full Circle Moment. 3 years after my cancer scare, an envelope arrived that would bring my story full circle in the most unexpected way. The return address showed it was from the state correctional facility. Inside was a letter from someone I never expected to hear from again, Dr. Antonio Pereira, the expensive lawyer Roberto had hired to fight me in court. "Dear Mr. Santos," the letter began, "you probably never expected to receive a letter from me, and I understand if you choose not to read further. However, I felt compelled to write after my recent experiences." The letter went on to explain that Dr. Pereira had been convicted of fraud related to several high-profile cases where he had helped wealthy clients hide assets from their families. He was serving a 3-year sentence and had lost his license. to practice law. During my incarceration, I've had considerable time to reflect on my career and the cases I handled. Your case against your son has haunted me more than any other. At the time, I viewed it simply as another legal challenge, a wealthy client who could pay my fees fighting what seemed like a straightforward family dispute. I didn't think deeply about the human cost of what was happening. But prison has a way of stripping away the rationalizations we use to justify our actions. I now understand that I wasn't just representing Roberto in a legal matter. I was helping him steal from his own father and justify throwing an elderly man out of his home. I've read about the foundation you started and the work you're doing to help other elder abuse victims. Every success story I read online makes me more ashamed of the role I played in your case. The letter concluded with an unexpected request. When I am released next year, I will be starting over completely. I've lost my career, my reputation, and most of my savings to legal fees and restitution payments. But I have gained something I never had before, a clear understanding of right and wrong. If you would consider it, I would like to volunteer with your foundation. I understand you may never trust me, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I have 25 years of legal experience that could be useful in fighting the kind of elder abuse I once helped enable. I don't expect a response, but I needed you to know that your dignity and strength in fighting for what was right ultimately helped me find my own moral compass. Thank you for that lesson, even though it took me far too long to learn it. I showed the letter to Alice, Anna, and Henrique. Their reactions were mixed, ranging from Alice's skeptical, "people don't really change that much," to Anna's more forgiving, "everyone deserves a chance at redemption." Henrique, as always, provided the practical perspective. His legal experience could be valuable, but we'd need to verify his sincerity and establish clear boundaries if we ever considered working with him. I decided to write back, not to offer him a position, but to acknowledge his letter and suggest that true redemption comes through consistent actions over time, not just words of regret. "Dr. Pereira," I wrote, "I appreciate your honesty about the past. If you're serious about making amends, start by helping elderly people in your own community when you're released. Prove through your actions that your transformation is real. If after a year of demonstrated commitment to elder advocacy, you still want to discuss volunteering with our foundation, we can have that conversation then." 6 months later, I received news that Dr. Pereira had been released early for good behavior and had immediately begun volunteering with a legal aid society that helped low-income seniors with basic legal issues. Chapter 14. The Next Generationers. My foundation work continued to expand. I began noticing a troubling trend. Many of the adult children who abused their elderly parents had learned those attitudes early in life. This observation led to our next major initiative: educational programs for younger generations about respecting and valuing elderly family members. We partnered with local schools to develop curricula that taught children about aging, the contributions of elderly people to society, and healthy intergenerational relationships. One of our most successful programs was Wisdom Partners, where elementary school students were paired with seniors from local retirement communities for monthly conversations and activities. 8-year-old Marcus was paired with 86-year-old Mr. Frank, a retired mechanic. Initially, Marcus saw Mr. Frank as just an old man who walked slowly and talked about boring old-timey stuff. But as their relationship developed, Marcus began to understand that Mr. Frank had lived through historical events he'd only read about in books, had built things with his hands that were still standing decades later, and had wisdom gained through experiences Marcus couldn't imagine. Mr. Eduardo, Marcus told me during one of our program evaluation sessions. Mr. Frank taught me how to fix my bike and told me stories about when cars didn't have computers in them. He's not boring at all. He's like a library with legs. Stories. Like Marcus and Mr. Franks convinced me that preventing elder abuse wasn't just about laws and consequences. It was about fundamentally changing how society views aging and elderly people. We expanded the program to high schools, where teenagers learned about the economic and social challenges facing elderly people. Many of these students went on to choose careers in geriatrics, social work, or elder law. Roberto, now in his early 40s, became one of our most effective youth program coordinators. His own experience with elder abuse, as the perpetrator, who found redemption, gave him unique credibility when talking to young people about respecting their grandparents and elderly relatives. "I tell them," Roberto explained during one of our staff meetings, "that your grandparents aren't just old people taking up space. They're the people who built the world you're living in. And someday you'll be old too," hoping the young people in your life treat you with dignity. Chapter 15. The national recognition. 5 years after starting the foundation, I received a phone call that left me speechless. "Mr. Santos, this is Maria Rodriguez from the National Council on Aging. We'd like to inform you that you've been selected as this year's recipient of the Outstanding Elder Advocate Award." The award ceremony was held in the nation's capital, with hundreds of people working in aging services from across the country in attendance. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of social workers, lawyers, healthcare providers, and fellow advocates, I felt the full weight of how far I'd come from that night when Roberto threw me out of my house with 2 bags of clothes. When I was 73 years old, I began my acceptance speech. I thought my life was essentially over. I'd been betrayed by the person I loved most, lost everything I thought mattered, and was sleeping in a stranger's back room, feeling sorry for myself. But sometimes our greatest defeats become the foundation for our most important victories. The injustice I experienced taught me that individual dignity and collective action are not separate things. They're connected parts of the same fight for human worth. Every elderly person we help recover stolen money, every family, relationship we help heal, every law we help change. These aren't just individual victories. They're part of a larger message that our society is sending, that people don't lose their value when they age, that families have obligations to protect their most vulnerable members, and that justice isn't just for the young and powerful. The standing ovation lasted over 5 minutes, but the most meaningful moment came afterwards, when dozens of people approached me with their own stories of elder abuse, recovery, and advocacy. A woman named Janet told me that seeing news coverage of my award ceremony had given her courage to report her son for stealing her Social Security checks. A man named Robert, the name made me smile, explained how he had reconciled with his elderly father after years of estrangement following a money dispute. "Your story," Janet explained, "showed me that fighting back wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my worth as a person." The award came with a $25,000 grant for elder advocacy work. We used the money to expand our legal aid program and open a second foundation office in a neighboring city. But the real value of the recognition was the platform it gave our message. Media interviews following the award ceremony helped spread awareness about elder abuse to audiences we had never reached before. Chapter 16. The full redemption. 8 years after our court battle, Roberto approached me with a proposal that would complete his journey from antagonist to ally in the most meaningful way possible. "Dad, I want to quit my job and come work for the foundation full-time." I was surprised by his request. Roberto had built a successful career in business management and was earning good money. Working for the foundation would mean taking a significant pay cut. Son, you have a family to support. The foundation can't pay you what you're making now. Dad, Carla and I have talked about this extensively. We've saved enough money to make this transition work. And honestly, the work I'm doing now feels empty compared to what we're accomplishing at the foundation. But why now? You've been volunteering successfully while keeping your regular job. Roberto sat back in his chair and chose his words carefully. Dad, for 8 years, I've been trying to make up for what I did to you, but I realize now that making amends isn't just about our relationship. It's about using what I learned from my mistakes to prevent other families from going through the same destruction. I understand elder abuse in a way that most people don't, because I was the abuser. I know the rationalizations, the self-justifications, the gradual process of dehumanizing your own parent that makes theft and abandonment seem acceptable. If I can use that understanding to help other families before they reach the breaking point we did, then maybe some good can come from the worst thing I ever did. His reasoning was compelling, but I had concerns about the practical implications. Roberto, working together this closely could put strain on our relationship. Are you prepared for that possibility? Dad, our relationship has already survived the worst possible strain. I think we can handle working together. We decided to try a 6-month trial period. Roberto would take a leave of absence from his regular job and work full-time with the foundation, focusing on family mediation and prevention programs. The arrangement exceeded everyone's expectations. Roberto's business skills helped us streamline operations and expand our reach. More importantly, his personal experience with elder abuse made him an exceptionally effective mediator in family financial disputes. He developed a prevention workshop, called Before It's Too Late, that he presented to adult children who were beginning to show signs of financial boundary issues with elderly parents. I tell them my story, Roberto explained during one of our staff meetings. I explain how easy it is to start seeing your elderly parent as a burden instead of a person, how financial stress and social pressures can make you rationalize taking control of their money for their own good. I show them where that path leads. His workshops had remarkable success rates. In our first year, Roberto mediated 37 family financial disputes, and 34 were resolved without legal action. The 6-month trial period became permanent. Roberto found his calling in prevention and family mediation work, and I found something I never expected. A son who had not only sought redemption, but had transformed his biggest failure into his greatest strength. Chapter 17. The Wisdom Years at 81. I had achieved more than I ever dreamed possible when I was thrown out of my house with 2 bags of clothes. The foundation was thriving under Anna and Roberto's leadership. My health was stable. My relationships were strong, but I was also beginning to feel the natural tiredness that comes with age. My energy levels weren't what they had been even 5 years earlier, and I found myself thinking more about mortality and legacy. This led to what I called my wisdom years, a period focused on distilling and sharing the most important lessons from my journey. I began writing a book about my experience, working with a ghostwriter who helped me organize decades of thoughts and experiences into coherent chapters. The book, titled Never Too Late: A Father's Journey from Betrayal to Redemption, was published when I was 82. But more important than the book were the speaking engagements and mentoring relationships that filled my final active years. Spoke at law schools about the intersection of family law and elder abuse. I addressed social work conferences about the psychological aspects of aging and family dynamics. I mentored younger advocates who were starting their own elder rights organizations. One of my most meaningful mentoring relationships was with David Kim, a 40-year-old social worker whose grandmother had been financially exploited by his uncle. David had started a small legal aid clinic for elderly Korean immigrants, and he sought my advice on expansion and fundraising. "Mr. Santos," David said during one of our monthly coffee meetings, "sometimes I get discouraged by how many people we can't help. The need is so overwhelming. David, let me tell you something I learned after years of this work. You can't save everyone, but everyone you do save matters infinitely, and every person you help becomes a voice for others who are still suffering in silence. But what about all the cases we never hear about? All the elderly people who are too afraid or too isolated to seek help. That's why the prevention and education work is so important. Every family that learns to communicate better, every adult child who gains awareness of elder abuse warning signs, every community that becomes more vigilant, those are victories that prevent suffering before it starts. These conversations with David and other young advocates reminded me that my individual story was part of a much larger movement toward respecting and protecting elderly people in our society. I'm writing these final words on my 85th birthday. The foundation has helped over 1,000 elderly people recover from financial abuse, family abandonment, and other forms of mistreatment. We've trained hundreds of lawyers, social workers, and healthcare providers to recognize and respond to elder abuse. Most importantly, we've changed the conversation about aging and family responsibility in our community. Roberto, now 50, has become a nationally recognized expert in elder abuse prevention. He speaks at conferences across the country, sharing our story and the lessons learned from our journey from conflict to collaboration. Anna, now 83 herself, continues to lead the foundation with energy that amazes everyone who meets her. She often jokes that fighting for elder rights has kept her younger than she would have been sitting at home feeling sorry for herself. Alice and I celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary last month. At our age, every year together is a gift, and we don't take any of them for granted. But the most meaningful development in my final years has been watching my granddaughter Eduarda, now 13, develop her own passion for social justice. She volunteers at the foundation during school breaks and has started a peer education program about elder abuse in her middle school. "Grandpa," she told me recently, "I want to be a lawyer like Mr. Henrique when I grow up, so I can help people, like you helped people." That's wonderful, sweetheart. But remember, you don't have to wait until you're a lawyer to help people. You can start making a difference right now. How? By treating elderly people with respect, by listening to their stories, by standing up when you see someone being mean to a grandparent or elderly neighbor. Justice isn't just about courtrooms and laws, it's about how we treat each other every day. Looking back on my journey from betrayal to redemption, from victim to advocate, from broken father to proud grandfather, I can honestly say that winning the lottery was the least important thing that happened to me. The real prize wasn't the money. It was discovering that it's never too late to fight for your dignity, never too late to demand respect, never too late to make a difference in the world. Every elderly person reading this story needs to remember you matter. Your experiences have value. Your wisdom is needed. Your dignity is worth fighting for. Every adult child needs to remember your parents gave up their dreams to make your dreams possible. They deserve better than being treated as a burden in their final years. And everyone needs to remember, we all age if we're lucky. The way we treat elderly people today determines how we'll be treated when our time comes. My story began with betrayal and heartbreak, but it ends with purpose, dignity, and the knowledge that one person's courage to fight injustice can create ripple effects that last for generations. The lottery gave me money, but fighting for my rights gave me something infinitely more valuable, the knowledge that I matter, that my life has meaning, and that it's never too late to stand up for what's right. That's a prize no lottery could ever offer, and that's a lesson I hope you'll carry with you long after you finished reading my story. Remember, you deserve respect. Fight for it. Stand up for it. Never settle for less. Because dignity, my friends, is the one thing no one can take from you unless you let them.